Hey guys, Jeremy Wallace here, Microsoft Certified Azure Solutions Architect and Senior Cloud Infrastructure Engineer for Safari Micro. Today I'm continuing my series on AZ-140, configuring and operating Microsoft Azure Virtual Desktop. This unit is assess network capacity and speed requirements. While this won't be a very long video, it is an important part of the Azure Virtual Desktop process. The quality of your experiments with your virtual desktop is going to depend greatly on the available network bandwidth. So different applications and display resolutions have varying network requirements, so it's important to ensure that your network is properly configured to meet your needs. The following recommendation that I have on my screen here from Microsoft applies to networks with less than 0.1% loss and are relevant regardless of the number of sessions that you actually have on your virtual machines. So if you can see here, applications, they list it by workload type. For the minimum recommended bandwidth for a smooth user experience. So if you recall from my previous videos, we went through the different workload types that Microsoft calls out: light, medium, heavy, and power. So with light, you have more of your browser-based workloads, not really doing anything CPU or memory intensive on the virtual desktop itself. And then as you increase medium, there's a little bit more. Maybe they're working with Microsoft Office applications, doing Excel spreadsheets, heavy, more data processing, maybe working with a little bit more intensive applications, power, your marketing, they're using Photoshop in there, or maybe they're doing AutoCAD architecture work from it. So those are your different workload types that they're mentioning here. And then the recommended bandwidth, minimum bandwidth for those they provide here. So light, 1.5 megabytes per second. Medium workload, 3 megabytes per second, heavy, 5 megabytes per second, and then power, 15 megabytes per second. So it's important to keep in mind that the strain on your network is influenced by two factors: the frame rate of your app's output and the resolution of your display. If either the frame rate or the display resolution increases, the bandwidth requirement will also increase. So for example, a light workload with a high resolution display will need more available bandwidth compared to a light workload with a regular or low resolution display. Bandwidth requirements for different scenarios can vary as well. So some things to keep in mind that do affect that are voice or video conferencing, real-time communication like that, streaming 4K video. So that's all going to affect the recommended bandwidth requirements there. So it's very important. Microsoft recommends doing load testing on the very types of scenarios. One, not just for the virtual machine performance itself, but also the network load that it's going to take. And so therefore you can test out your bandwidth requirements. One simulation tool that they call out by name in their training documentation is LogNVSI. LogNVSI does provide a way to do simulated load testing, stress testing with your virtual desktops, and that includes all sorts of virtual desktop products that are out there, not just Azure Virtual Desktop. So by adjusting the load size, running stress tests, and simulating common user scenarios in remote sessions, you can really gain a better understanding of your network's requirements and then adjust accordingly, or determine, hey, maybe this virtual desktop setup's not going to work for this environment. So those are definitely things to keep in mind. Some more about the display resolutions, we'll head down in here. So different display resolutions require really varying levels of bandwidth. So here's a list that Microsoft provides that outlines the recommended bandwidths for a smooth user experience based on the display resolution. So the previous table was on workload type, and this is based on resolution size. So they're making some assumptions here, assuming a frame rate of 30 frames per second, and then these recommendations apply both to a single or multi-user scenario. So whether you're doing individual personally assigned virtual desktops or it's a multi-session AVD host. And then it's also important to note that the scenarios with a frame rate below 30 frames per second, like reading static tests, do require less bandwidth. So you can kind of take 30 frames per second as the high there, and then if they can do a lower resolution, then the network bandwidth requirements isn't going to be as much. So the resolutions that they mention here, 1024 by 768, 1.5 megabytes per second, 1280 by 720, 3 megabytes per second, 1920 by 1080, 5 megabytes per second, and then 3840 by 2160, which is your 4K resolution, 15 megabytes per second. So again, this is a quick video, but a very important one to talk about. Network bandwidth considerations are a big part. When we're launching virtual desktops, we often find that there is, if their network can't quite support the virtual desktop infrastructure, if they're onboarding a lot of users and there's some network connection issues, it directly affects the end user experience, not just in, oh, I can't connect to my virtual desktop, but lag in their performance and being able to click on things. So all of a sudden there's a lag time in between moving their mouse and what they're clicking on. So you want to try to avoid those nightmare scenarios where you're testing in a live environment that you're like, I think this will work. You deploy it and then, oh, all of a sudden this can't work. And there's other network considerations to take in there too, like your round trip time. And we'll talk about that in our next video when we talk about the Azure region experience estimator, which tests what your round trip time performance is going to be between your physical location and that Azure region that your Azure virtual desktops are in. But that's it for this video. Again, I'm Jeremy Wallace. I'm going to continue building these videos on AZ-140. Continue to follow me. Follow me on LinkedIn. I'm posting stuff on Azure all the time there. And of course, if you're not subscribed to our MS Cloud Bros channel, please do so for more content on the Microsoft Cloud, as well as more videos in the series on AZ-140. All right. See you guys later.